folks. Welcome to Techthusiasm in a rare afternoon hangout live stream. Going to talk a little bit here about some of my best and worst kind of favorites and some of my mishaps from the year 2022. Welcome everybody as you're joining. Hit those likes as you come in, leave a comment, let me know, hey, that you're here. I appreciate, of course, all the support that the channel has received this year. It's really been, I think, a banner experience this year in particular for the channel. I started in June-ish of 2021, and just the growth, the activity, the opportunities, the community building, the relationships, everything that's happened this year with this channel and this whole Techthusiasm endeavor, I am just extremely grateful for. So if you're watching this, if you watched any of the content, supported any of my content this year, I just want to say, thank you so much. It's been an amazing experience, and I'm super looking forward to what 2023 has in store for this whole endeavor. We'll see where things go. I've already got my wheels turning for content ideas, for things that I want to do around my home theater spaces, technology, and all of that in the new year. So I am solo today. I got my little makeshift Christmas studio in the corner here set up. But the last month and a half pretty much been live streaming with all kinds of different guests, thanks to Chris, Brad, Taurus, Dan, and all of the guys that I've had the opportunity to either have on this channel or be on other channels like the Daily Hi-Fi and Michael Youthman's channel. So I want to give a super thanks to Aaron, Joe, Chana, all of the guys, all of the folks that I've met, befriended, and had some opportunity to collaborate with this year. Looking super forward to doing more of that into 2023 as well. So hoping to kick off next week with a live stream about basically looking forward into 2023, and already chatting with some folks, special guests, and all of that. Co-streams lined up starting into January, and already starting to crank out produced videos and other content that'll be going live starting next week. So again, as you're coming in, hit those likes, sound off in the comments. Let me know you're here. Got a couple of highs. JPA Art, hello there. Travis, happy holidays. Same to you. And Julius, one of the channel stalwarts the whole time. Thanks so much. Hello. Yeah, it's pretty cool to be able to do this in an afternoon on a normal Wednesday at 3 o'clock. I'm working the day job, so hence the reason most of the live streams, or pretty much all the live streams, have fallen in the 7, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Eastern start time. But I'm off this week. It's rest and relaxation week between Christmas and New Year's here. So just been enjoying family time, doing stuff all around. We went to a theater show at the Fox Theater in Detroit, Cirque du Soleil Christmas show. That was pretty sweet Monday night. And then we've kind of just been hunkering down a little bit. My daughter, we had some grander plans for the week, but my daughter came down with a cold. And so that's kind of kept us in the house playing games and board games and some video games and all that in the meantime. Yo, hey, hi Finest 343. Again, more of the regulars sounding off. So if you have any questions, fire them out there. I'm happy just to kind of see where the discussion takes us. And again, I've got some thoughts to share, some look back kind of on the 2023 or 2022, that is, Techthusiasm kind of experience, all across different types of things that I've had the pleasure of experiencing this year in home theater and again, other technology. So I guess let's jump right into that stuff. And if there are questions, please, by all means, pop them in the chat. So I made a little bit of a list of kind of look back stuff, thinking about, okay, what content did I actually get to watch this year? What games did I play? What devices and things did I like the most? In my tech in the home theater, what did I like the worst? Actually, I got a few more things on the worst list actually than the best list. And then some of the decisions, I did quite a bit all around the theater spaces and that this year. I kicked off 2022 basically rebuilding my dedicated home theater room with the Focal Anthem Parasound Scope Scream scope screen integration, and all of that. So it's been a pretty active year. So we'll get to some questions here in just a second. So I figured I'll start with movies, right? Primarily talking home theater here. Let's talk about movies. Movies have been an interesting, I think, evolution for me in 2022, with most of our movie watching actually or my movie watching being with the family. So some of the biggest movies that have come out and been really or available to watch at home this year, I still haven't seen them. I haven't watched The Batman in its entirety. I haven't watched Matrix Revolutions. I did get the chance to watch Top Gun Maverick, and so I think I'll put that amongst the top of my kind of favorite movies for the year. I think that was just a really fun one. And I think even part and parcel with the movie itself, as I was thinking, like, what movies did I really enjoy the most this year? One of the conclusions that I was kind of coming to was my enjoyment of those couple of movies wasn't even necessarily just about the movie experience itself, sitting down and watching the film. It was about the other elements, the social elements and stuff that went along with it. So when we watched Top Gun for the first time, we watched it with very close friends of ours in our home theater room. I think in the totality of 2022, most of the theater use was probably our family, or a little bit by myself as well. And I think we only had maybe guests in the theater, not even a handful of times, probably, not counting the kids going down there with some of their friends, but as adults. So Top Gun Maverick, we watched, 4 of us, 4 adults with some really close friends. That was the first time I got to see it. Awesome presentation in our room. I think they did a great job with that movie overall. Watched it on the Kaleidescape early before the disc release. That was pretty sweet as well. And we actually watched it again Christmas Day. We had some of my wife's family over, in-laws, and some of the extended in-law family. And so a bunch of us guys, 5 of us guys, I think, were sitting down there, and we cranked out for what for me was a second viewing of Top Gun Maverick, but for most of them a first viewing. And the opportunity for really all of them to kind of experience the theater room, home theater, hopefully done right in our space, and have some fun with that. The other one that I really I think enjoyed, and again, this is kind of part and parcel of the experience of it, in addition to it just being a fun film, was The Bad Guys. So family movie, and that kind of represented for me a couple different things. It was the first time that we had been out to the theater since, I don't know, sometime before COVID came and shut everything down. So my wife and I and the 2 kids, on what was a happy weekday, earlier in the year, we went out to the theater to see that. The theater experience sucked. Reminded me why I really don't ever want to go to the show. When you've got a really nice, competent, capable, particularly dedicated projection-based home theater room, in my opinion, for me, like, I have almost no interest to go to the show. But we had some free passes, and the family really wanted to see it. So The Bad Guys ranks up very highly there with me. That's a book series. We read a lot in our household, independently and actually with each other. At any given time, I'm reading some books with my son, or a book or some series. My wife is reading a book or some series with him, and the same thing with our daughter. So we've got a lot of book reading activities going on in parallel with each other. And The Bad Guys is a book series that I read with my son. We read it its entirety. The new one just came out, and so we were able to we've got that one ready to read. But having the movie of a book series that I enjoyed together with my son, and then being able to watch it as a movie, we all keep saying that we want to watch that one again in our own room. It's been out for home release for a little while now, but I think we'll crank that one up soon. Watch it again at home for a superior experience than we had at the theater, actually. Then we went to. So those are kind of, I think, my 2 highest favorites. We did just watch Strange World last night, actually. Kaleidescape, download for that. I thought that movie looked really great. I think some of the plot might have been a little bit out there, but it was a fun ride nonetheless. And I'm always in for family, parenting, fatherhood type of stories. So I do recommend giving that one a watch as well. On the worst side for movies, I didn't really have too many, I don't think, that I would put in my worst category. And actually, stuff that we kind of put, movies that we watched that we thought were the worst, actually ended up being some of the funnest movie experiences that we had as a family. My daughter is always looking for movies involving horses, and she found this Christmas movie about Christmas Horses. It's called Christmas Ranch. Terrible, terrible movie, but we had fun basically, watching the bad movie together. And then if you have kids, particularly younger kids, and you've never seen them, check out The Dog Who Saved. Terrible movies. And for some reason, they made like 8 of these things. The dog saves everything. He saved Easter, the holidays, Christmas vacation, summer vacation, and whatever. Same actors throughout, including like some notable kind of B Hollywood stars and all of that. But kind of like so bad they're funny. And some of the stuff that they pull out in those movies really stands out. So yeah, so bad they're good. Kind of falling into that category. All right, let's answer a couple questions that popped up. Hi Finest 343, can you talk a bit about your target curve in the Anthem, bass boost, deep bass boost, and how to apply this concept to Odyssey with curves of equal loudness? So one of the things that I'm planning to do, and I think I'll probably get it in January, is similar to how I did the live stream with the Apple TV when the 2022 model came out. And I had the UI of the Apple TV up on the stream as I set it up and did all of that. And then just whatever it was, a week or so ago, did the stream with Chris Deering where we put the Kaleidescape UI up and went through kind of all of it, or a whole bunch of it anyway, live and hands-on, talking about what we like and didn't like and answering questions. I kind of want to do the same thing with the Anthem stuff. So just FYI, that I am planning that's coming. Basically just screen share Arc Genesis, screen share the web UI of the Anthem AVM 70, and go through a bunch of stuff exactly like this, kind of what configurations, tweaks, how to use the Genesis software, some of the interesting things that I found about it. But if I gave a short answer to this, I would say that in my AVM 70, and I copy the same kind of settings with the STR in the living room as well, is I run a Harman-esque kind of curve where there's about, not quite, but maybe close to like a 10 dB variance, where the lower frequencies are the higher dB and the higher frequencies are the lower dB, so it kind of tilts down. In order to accomplish that in ARC or with the Anthem products, you have to tweak a couple of different things, because by default, that curve will come out much flatter versus having more of the differential and more of the tilt. And so what I've done and what I've seen recommended as well from some of the videos that I made about it is the first thing to tweak in the Anthem settings is what they call the room gain setting. So in my configuration, I add a little room gain. I add just a touch, like 1 dB of deep bass boost, and then I add like a -2 dB tilt. And that gives a nice kind of flowing curve going down. I think the same concept of building a curve like that applies regardless of what room correction software you may be using, whether it's the more advanced Odyssey app version or Dirac or Anthem or whatever it might be. Pretty much all of these softwares let you make adjustments to essentially sound volume at certain frequencies to arrive at what gives you a curve as it sweeps from essentially 0 to whatever 20k hertz. How you achieve that specifically in Odyssey in the new like powerful app, honestly I'm not entirely sure, just because I haven't been hands-on with it, but I would expect that you have to buy the more advanced Odyssey tweaking software in order to accomplish that. And once you have it, you should be able to make adjustments and such to that target. It'll run its measurements and then it'll apply its calculations, essentially trying to achieve the curve that you put in. And I think the Odyssey one as well, the $200-ish one, gives you even some more fine-tuning control, like parametric EQ and some other things. Anthem doesn't specifically have PEQ. You work with kind of the curve in totality with the settings that they give you. But I will dive into that. Like I said, I'm planning for it, dedicated live stream, hands-on, screen share, Anthem, all about Genesis and calibration and kind of how I run my stuff, and share it and hopefully learn some things together there. So Travis is asking, what made you go with sealed subs in your theater rather than the ported Arundels? A couple of different things. One is my screen was already hung and kind of set at a height that I want to say is on the order of 20-ish inches off the floor. And so the 1723 2V which is the ported version of the larger Arundel subs, is something like 24, 25 inches tall. And so expecting that I was initially going to put both the two subs that I started with were going to end up somewhere in the front of the room. Size was what was one limiting factor right off of the bat. If the subs ended up in front of the screen, I didn't want the height of the sub protruding into the bottom of the screen image. I wanted to make sure that the height of the sub was below the screen image, and ideally below even the frame of the screen, so that it would all just blend away and not be obtrusive or call attention to itself. And so the 1723 2S's have a smaller chassis and a height that basically allowed for that. The other element was that I think in my space, the way the space is built, it's fairly rectangular. There's not a whole lot of very specific challenge to it. It's treated pretty well. To me, rather than dealing with some of the possible, say, shortcomings of a ported sub, when how it gives you more impact, right, in certain ways, but it also drops off faster. I'm kind of just drawn to the general characteristic or character maybe of how a sealed sub is more kind of consistent and gradual. And I think in my space, with the way it's set up, the reinforcement and all of that those subs go low enough, they're impactful enough, they're deep enough, not to deal with or worry about or whatever any of the potential shortcomings of a ported sub, even if maybe realistically in my space, in the volumes that we play movies at, I might have never actually really physically encountered, say, limitations of a ported sub anyway. So I don't know. To me, I had sealed subs before. I think I've really only ever had sealed subs. The RELs I had originally were sealed, and then into the Arundels. I've been happy with it, and so I just kind of stuck with that. But size and integration factor was part of it. The 2Vs have a more significant footprint than the 2S's, and that was part of my constraints. And then JPA Art says, debating to upgrade, is it really worth it? I have a Samsung S95B TV and Sony Z9F soundbar. Like to upgrade to the HW990B. I'm not sure what the HW990B is. Let's take a look. Samsung soundbar. Okay, this must be an HWQ 990B, 11.1.4 wireless Dolby Atmos DTX. Interesting. So I don't have a whole lot of hands-on experience with soundbars, quite honestly. My friend of mine is running, I believe, a Sony in his living room, and he's been pretty happy with it. I did have a Samsung soundbar in my living room for a shorter spell, and in between taking all of my discrete audio out of the living room when we actually built the dedicated theater space, I figured, yeah, I'll be happy enough with the soundbar in this room, and I found that I wasn't ultimately, and so I took the soundbar out and put some speakers back in to get to the kind of 2.2 or return, I guess, to a 2.2 channel setup that I have today. All I can say is I think from a very little that I've researched those or seen other folks or other channels that review that kind of stuff talk about them, I don't think you can really go wrong either way. But I don't know necessarily how much or if at all that Samsung bar may be an upgrade over the Sony. You might in some ways just be splitting hairs unless there's a significant channel count difference or whatever. But even then, most soundbars, right, they do their Atmos with upward firing speakers and other sonic tricks and all of that. So yeah, sorry, I don't have a whole lot of experience from which to make a recommendation on that. All right, so another favorite, best and worst 2022 TV series. So we watched, actually we had a really hard time, my wife and I. Most of the TV series watching I do with my wife. And we were pretty slow getting through some shows. but we watched some fun ones. I'll say it was interesting watching the end of This Is Us. My wife and I usually watch some kind of family drama show together, and This Is Us wrapped up. So we wrapped up that show. That was definitely a heartstring tugger. But amongst the shows that I would say I watched myself that I found to be kind of crazy and fun, The Boys stands out to me. Kind of binged the entirety of the content of The Boys this calendar year. Very adult, FYI, in case you go check that out. It's Amazon Prime exclusive. Looked pretty good, even for Amazon. Normally, Amazon represents a little lower in the streaming technicals, but I thought that show looked pretty great. And I did do some of it, or maybe a good half of it, in the theater room itself for the whole immersive big screen surround sound experience. But I'm a longtime comic book fan. I never really read The Boys, but I did kind of pick up that content with the TV show. I love superhero stuff, though, very much. Usually a Marvel Comics fan in the superhero area more than anything. But that show is just wild. Really crazy, interesting take on kind of the world of superheroism, and a commentary on social media aspects kind of our times. Hyper violent, some crazy adult themes and situations and whatnot. But that I found that show to be a really big standout, kind of a wild ride. We did a little bit of Marvel. I'm so behind in my Marvel Cinematic Universe content. I make the excuse for myself that as much as I'm a home theater movie fan and a Marvel Comics fan, to be like several films and a few shows behind the releases, I just can't keep up with them all. So we're still back on. We finished up Hawkeye and the Winter Soldier. That's how far behind I am on the Marvel content. But at least I can say that I've read most of the comics stories that are behind all the stuff that goes into the movie. So I'm one with the source content. Yeah, I'm going to flag this one for sure. Music Jewel, Invincible. Invincible is good too. I read that whole comic book series as well, 150 some issues of that. Robert Kirkman, the same creator, same guy that created and wrote The Walking Dead. Invincible is his superhero series. I watched that at the very beginning of this calendar year, actually. So that certainly makes one of my favorite lists, because I did like the comic book so much. And I think season 2 of that is maybe season 2 and 3 back to back even are finally on their way. So another good adult take, violent, but interesting take on the idea of superheroes and that. And I don't think I really had a worst show, I guess. I wasn't. I mean, we watched Falcon and Winter Soldier. That's kind of so old by today's standards, though probably not even worth mentioning. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was super great. I thought the What If series was pretty good. I did watch that this year on Disney Plus. But the other show that we just kind of wrapped up, my wife and I together, was Cobra Kai. So if I had to put something in a worst column, I think I'm going to put Cobra Kai in the worst. I think Cobra Kai is another one of those things that kind of like goes sideways. I think it's almost jumped its own shark a little bit, and I'm amazed that show is getting another season. But at least the last season kind of gave some real motivations to the story. Like, why are they training these kids to be a karate army? And what are they trying to do with them? There's finally some kind of answers or some backstory that they made that a little sensible. I think that show started as like 1980s fan service. And it disappeared for a while or off of YouTube, and then came back with Netflix, kind of went sideways. But I call it a guilty pleasure. It definitely, sometimes you laugh with it, and sometimes the 80s nostalgia hits really good. Sometimes I felt I was like kind of laughing at it in a way, but it was a good ride nonetheless. I can't, as basically a child of the 80s, I cannot fault all of this awesome 80s kind of resurgent content that we're getting. Things like Top Gun, things like Cobra Kai, and others. I think they're going to make a Ferris Bueller spin-off movie coming up here with the guys that take the Ferrari. So I think we're right in a prime of like the 1980s being mined for content. I think in a way that's always fun and nostalgic for me, because in another decade or so we'll be further on into the 90s, and I just get to keep getting older. So a couple questions here. Julius, thinking about upgrading my front stage amp from Emotiva to Anthem. Yep, I think we talked about that in the comments a little bit. Think it'd make an appreciable audio upgrade. What improvements should I expect? So, I did the Emotiva upgrade. I had XPA amps. I had an 11-channel XPA Gen 3. And actually, even before that, I had a triple of the XPA. I had the second generation, I guess, the second generation. I had 2 5s in a 3, similar to what I have right now. Kind of wish in retrospect I had never changed out those Gen 2s for the single Gen 3. I might have decided to keep them a little bit longer. But I did make the move from those Emotivas to the Parasound. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's hard. I think amps are one of those things that's really hard, and you'll see a lot of people pontificate about how impactful they are, and they can hear differences. And you got other people saying that if you have a good amp, you shouldn't really be able to hear any difference. I changed a lot of things at the same time, going from Triad speakers and Marantz processing and Emotiva amplification to Focal plus Anthem plus Parasound. So I didn't do single variable changes to say like, okay, the amp was so impactful or whatever. I kind of, my system, fell off of a cliff, so to speak, or completely changed over from a whole set to another whole set at the same time. That said, I mean, I would hope and think that something like an Anthem amp or the Parasounds that I have are a tier higher than an Emotiva in terms of build quality, parts, looking inside the construction of that Parasound. It's a different animal certainly than the XPA 11 Gen 3 with its blades and different type of amp architecture and all of that is. The best advice that I would give in this case is to maybe buy from somewhere that is willing to let you have a loaner or a demo, particularly in your own system, in your own setup, where you could hear them and then kind of decide for yourself whether you want to go ahead and make that purchase or not. I think ultimately they are a little bit, the Anthem, Parasound, etc., is another tier of price above Emotiva. I think it is legitimately another tier of build quality above Emotiva. Is that really worth audible performance to make that money worth spending? It's tough to say. I'm happy with, I can say as well, I'm happy with the upgrade. I'm happy to have moved from the Emotivas to the Parasound. Part of that is because of just like opening up the channels a little bit and moving off of the Gen 3, which again, I think overall performance, power, and all of that, it would have been better for me to have stuck with the Gen 2s. Going from multiple Gen 2s to a Gen 3 was not an upgrade per se. It was kind of a sine grade or even a downgrade in some ways. But I think I'll be happily running these Parasounds for a good long time to come. I am interested to test out some Class Ds. I'd love to get like an Apple on audio, or there's the guy, Buckeye Amps, the guy in Ohio here is pretty close. So who knows, maybe in 2023, be able to get my hands on something else, plug it in place of the Parasounds and see if I notice anything there. All right, so one more best of category, video games. So video gaming is one of those things that it's been really challenging, I think, overall for me to do this year, but I had some fun playing games, and less so by myself, more so actually more so with my son. So one of the games, I'm just looking at my Steam replay, 43% of my video game time on the PC on Steam this year, 54 play sessions, was Hot Wheels Unleashed. So that one was a ton of fun. And again, playing with my son, he's getting of the age now where he's able to really get into some more complex games. So I beat most of the harder races, but we would sit there together, trading the controller back and forth, kind of having fun, beating the races and building up our account and doing it together. And I think there's a recurring theme here that some of the most fun that I had with media in 2022 was really not about the media itself. It was about the experience of who I was sharing it with and what I was doing with it. or who I was doing it with, rather. So not a whole lot of single player gaming, but more gaming with my son. We did Hot Wheels. We've done some Lego games. Always enjoy the Lego games. We played DC superheroes or villains. Actually, we're playing Marvel superheroes right now. But the game I've spent the most time playing, particularly in these last few months of the year, has been Marvel Snap. I mentioned that in another podcast. I got this massive $4,000 gaming PC sitting in the basement, and here I am on my iPad playing a card game. But card games have really kind of taken over a lot of my interest this year. And I find Marvel Snap so fun. The best explanation that I've seen about Marvel Snap is that it's kind of like 5-dimensional chess, which that description makes a lot of sense to me, right? You make a deck out of a wide collection of cards, all of which have special abilities and things that they do. You play on a game board where there's 3 locations. The locations impact your game. The cards that the opponent is playing impacts your game. And so I was doing that together with my son as well. He I started it ahead of him, and he saw me playing it and thought that looked interesting. And he's really taken an interest in Marvel heroes this year. So he kind of started playing it a little bit on my wife's devices before I finally said, we don't need to play separately, especially in a game that has some microtransactions. If you want to upgrade your stuff and make kind of all the progress, like we're going to do microtransactions exactly one time. And so let's kind of play this together. We'll play on one account. We can sit and strategize. When we play together, we play better, because maybe if I was going to make a mistake, he catches it, or vice versa. And he might have some ideas of ways to play the cards in a certain game versus me. So yeah, I think we do better together than individually, but that's been a super fun one. And always like Sneaky Sasquatch on Apple Arcade. If you've got younger kids, it's basically Zelda, I would say. Taking the little Sasquatch guy all through town, and they just put out another content drop for that. So my son's all into that one. I help him out with the harder challenges there. I don't know if I really have necessarily a worst of. Maybe the worst game that I played was this game called Air Twister, also on Apple TV, Apple Arcade. It's basically like old school Space Harrier / Panzer Dragoon. And I just don't think that one presented itself too well. And another one that we played, just for the nostalgia of it, played G.I. Joe Operation Blackout on the PC. My son ended up jumping into that with me as well, same screen co-op. I'm a Super Joe fan from the 80s, a real American hero era with the cartoon and all of that. So as I was looking through my Steam library one day, it's like, yeah, this is pretty short. I want to knock this G.I. Joe game out. But as a video game, I have to say it was not good. It was pretty terrible, but hey, you got to run around with Snake Eyes for 6 or 7 hours. So that makes for a good, at least a fun enough experience in my book. All right. So if you've got some questions, comments, fire them out by all means, please do. Otherwise, another kind of category that I was thinking of, it kind of folds into home theater a little bit as well, but for books, I think one of the book series that I read and really enjoyed the most this year, I did a lot more reading actually in 2022, I think, than I did overall in 2021. But my son and I, in addition to The Bad Guys, highly recommend The Bad Guys. If you've got particularly younger kids as well, read the books, watch the movie. The other one that stands out to me is The Last Kids on Earth. So we just started reading The Last Kids on Earth, my son and I, maybe a month and a half or so ago. We're only on book 3, about halfway book 3. Turns out there's like 8 of these, plus some offshoots and other things. And Netflix has made a show for it. We haven't checked in and watched any of the show yet. I hope the show is good. I'll probably check that out with my son or with the family in 2023. But I think Last Kids on Earth has been kind of some of the funnest ride of books that I've kind of read in a while. My son's really into it. Super heroics, the end of the world, zombie-ish monster apocalypse. That's kind of one of my favorite fantasy kind of elements. Always like Night of the Living Dead is probably at the top of my horror type movies. Walking Dead, comic book, and the TV series earlier on, maybe more so than later on, has always been amongst my favorite stuff. So yeah, if you're looking for some books to read, with your younger kids, or maybe getting into a little bit tween. Can't recommend Last Kids on Earth. We just ended up buying the whole series. Barnes and Noble. If you like books and games, we didn't realize this before, but on Tuesday we went 2 days after Christmas. If you have one around you, Barnes and Noble is basically half off the entire store. Board games, hardcovers. So we had kind of a second Christmas on Tuesday, shopping at Barnes and Noble, buying so much stuff. And the other one that I'll toss out there as well, not specifically tech, but something that we've really had a tremendous amount of fun with, my son and I really bonded over, is Marvel Champions. It's a living card game, not a blind buy collectible card game, but you buy defined packs, you get specific cards, you play as a hero against a villain scenario. You pick a specific hero and they have a certain set of cards representing their abilities, and you augment that with some deck building and deck strategy if you want to. You don't necessarily have to. You can play it either solo, 2 players. I usually mostly play with my son, or 3 or 4 player. And we have done some 4-player games, but they tend to get long. And the ladies in the household aren't quite as interested in it as the boys. But my son and I, man, we're rolling right through this game. For Christmas, I got a big old storage case now to put our cards in. Everything is sleeved. And my son and I were about to beat the last scenario of the first boxed expansion. It's called Rise of the Red Skull. So we've already defeated Taskmaster and Zola and the Absorbing Man in that campaign. Red Skull's beaten us once, but we got to get back in there, try to beat him again. So we got a whole bunch of Marvel Champion stuff for Christmas, probably 6 or 7 hero packs, some extra villain packs, some more organization and storage for it. Having a ton of fun with that game. If you're a Marvel Comics, superheroes, cinematic universe fan, and you want to do something, particularly with a friend or kids or partner or whatever it might be, that's off screen, Marvel Champions, go buy the base kit and have some fun with that. You get Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Iron Man, and I think one more that's escaping me, on a really fun starter campaign where you defeat Rhino and Claw and Ultron. Really, really, really great game, and probably one of my best of most fun things that I've discovered and kind of gotten into this year. All right, a couple questions. Travis, question: silly to spend cash to go from a Gen 2 Apple TV 4K to a Gen 3. Your thoughts on the two? In my opinion, it is never silly to spend the money to upgrade a device like that. So first of all, and I'm making an assumption here, right? Let's say the device is $150. If that's a lot of money, or it is a stretch of your finances that you really, really have to feel it's super, super worth it to spend that money, well, then that's a consideration. And so I'm a little bit biased here, I guess, but for me and my systems, $150 is really not a lot, so to speak, compared to what I have in the rest of my hardware and my home theater stuff. So to me, $150, if they put that box out every single year, I'll buy the new one. But I feel that I also get a lot of value out of it. The Apple TV for me, or for our household, is the main device that we use for a whole lot of stuff. So generally speaking, we'll watch movies in the theater on the Kaleidescape first. But that aside, everything else we do is Apple TV, YouTube TV, Netflix, iTunes, Disney Plus, HBO Max, anything that we watch on any of those services, it's on the Apple TV. Looking at family photos and videos and that sort of stuff, if we're doing that on a TV screen in our household, it's the Apple TV. I subscribe to Apple One, Apple Music. We got Apple Music playing in our living room, probably 16 out of the 24 hours of the day. That's on the Apple TV. Apple Arcade, as I mentioned, Sneaky Sasquatch, really awesome game. My son's super into it. I love playing that with him. And a couple other games that we kind of pick up and play. It's all Apple Arcade. It's all Apple TV. So the Gen 3, it's not going to necessarily buy you picture quality, I think. There's been some conjecture about that on forums or whatnot. I don't think I've really noticed the box necessarily looking better. I think I do notice that the newest model, compared to the last model, works a little snappier. It's a little faster. It's got more RAM. It's got more storage, which is something that I needed because we keep a lot of stuff loaded and resident on our Apple TV. So if that matters for you, that could be a reason. I did buy the more expensive one because I like my devices to be hardwired and I want that Ethernet port. But I think if you're in the Apple ecosystem, you got iPhones, iPads, buy movies or have any kind of a movie library on iTunes, and that's your main box, absolutely, I would upgrade it. I would go buy it again, always to the latest model of that device in a heartbeat, just because for us, we use it so much. And I even sold, I think you buy the new one for $150-ish. I think I sold my Gen 2 Apple TVs for like $60 a piece. So, net cost to upgrade 90. I just sold them on Facebook Marketplace. I think 2 for $120 or something. Somebody came and bought them. So always keep your boxes and all of that. And that always helps to buffer the cost of kind of the new thing. But I love the Apple TV. It's the standard device in our household here. And then basically similar question. Now you've had the 3rd-gen Apple TV for a while. Do you think it's upgrading? Yep. Again, kind of the individual decision. If you won't miss the $150, or maybe $100 after you upgrade, and sell the old one, I'd go do it in a heartbeat. All right, so perfect segue. Let's talk a second about devices. Some of the best and worst devices on my list kind of for 2022. And so I've got a couple best and I've got a few worsts. So looking back, one of the things that I'm going to put in my best category, and kind of something that I really honestly went full circle on this year, in some ways, has been Kaleidescape. So I started the year with a Strato S, the single unit combined player storage in one, and I was kind of starting to get frustrated with it a bit. I was finding that the way that we were using it wasn't working very well for us. Particularly that 6 terabytes of storage was a little too small. Keeping, granted 6 terabytes is 100 movies, but yeah, I felt after we kept a pretty good selection of favorites, a pretty good selection of movies that different members of the household wanted to watch or would want to have ready to watch, and then as new stuff was coming out, buying it to have that ready, that I was feeling pretty constrained with 6 terabytes. But more importantly than that, 45-minute downloads. On a Strato S single player in Kaleidescape, it takes on the order of 45 minutes plus to download a 4K movie. And so what would happen, at least the way that we tend to operate in our household here, is, it's 5, 6 o'clock, having dinner. What are we going to do tonight? Okay, let's do family time, family pick. All right, whose movie pick is it? All right, it's yours. What movie do you want to watch? It's like, oh, that one's not downloaded. All right, well, by the time that decision is made, and everybody's kind of ready to watch the movie, we don't have time to wait another half an hour or whatever for the movie to download in order to start watching it. Before then, it might be a weeknight, and we're getting into time where, okay, like kids should already be in bed. And it's making it take too long, particularly if, movie goes 2 hours, you're not starting it until 7 o'clock on a school night, that's 9 o'clock plus. I don't know about your kids, but mine don't just like turn the movie off and go to bed and close their eyes and fall asleep. So there's always lag time built in there. So I was getting a little, we were just using it less and less, actually. We would end up opting to just stream more things. So earlier in the year, I made the decision, I'm going to sell the S and go back to Strato C Terra setup. And I think that was a very excellent decision. Now I'm back to like 10-minute downloads. We can watch anything, pick a movie, have it ready to watch, 10, 12 minutes, best case scenario, which is about the time it legitimately takes to say, let's watch it. And then everybody's sitting in the room kind of ready to watch it. So we have, more or less on demand kind of playback. I went with the 12 terabyte Terra, not the 6, so 200. I find 200 movies of storage, give or take, is a much nicer sweet spot to keep enough things ready to go and choose from and have some space. Still have to delete and turn movies over and all of that. But again, with the faster downloads, it works. I really like the compact Terra. So having both the Strato C and the compact Terra, in a 1U rack mount kit side by side is awesome versus I did have an independent Terra a couple of years ago, the 24 terabyte, much bigger unit, 4 hard drives and all that. So the form factor, the installation, the integration, all of that stuff. And then this year I did do a lot more stuff, getting back into ripping a little bit. I kind of wanted to do a series of content around ripping on the channel, making MKV files and some of the pitfalls and the right way to go about doing it and all that. So I've spun out a ton of content kind of in the mid to latter half of the year on the channel for that. And I did find myself asking the question again, like, okay, maybe this is good enough. I just stick to doing this. But ultimately, again, kind of came full circle to the idea that no, I don't really have the patience or the time to dedicate to procuring content, ripping content, setting content up, the patience to deal with some of the challenges and the pitfalls and all that with it. So long story short of that, I really locked myself back in with my commitment to Kaleidescape. I went in and I upgraded a ton of movies that I had the HD rights for, bought the 4K upgrade for $4 to $10 on a bunch of offers that had been sitting in my account for a while. Bought a ton of movies in the Black Friday sale and in the sales since. And as we've watched kind of new stuff like Strange World last night, just Kaleidescape, buy it, download it, watch it, super high fidelity. So yeah, I'm kind of back, kind of fully on the Kaleidescape train. And so based on that, it definitely hits into some of the best of categories. I think that's the best, a best decision for me to enjoy high bit rate, higher fidelity content, particularly in my home theater, over physical media, and particularly over ripping. To me, ripping is just not the best choice of endeavors for me personally. Kudos to all the folks that make that, and it has its virtues. It's a good way to go. The other device that I'll put in my kind of favorites for the year, not home theater, but I have to mention it, has been my Kindle. So over the years, I think this is the third Kindle that I've owned. I had one, didn't use it, sold it. Figured a couple years ago, I got the whatever the latest model of the Oasis is, the highest end version that they have. Didn't really use it, sold it. And then last Christmas, actually, asked the family again. I think I want a Kindle again. And so they bought me one. It sat in the box for months. I finally opened it up about midsummer, and I've kind of discovered a few things, a year of growth in so many ways about just myself and how I go about doing things and focus and all that. And so I've spent probably more time on my Kindle in the second half of the year, certainly than I did in the theater room by far, or maybe even in totality, watching movies and all of that. So I've caught up on some book series from some authors that I really enjoy. R.A. Salvatore and the Forgotten Realms Drit series. I've read some nonfiction stuff. I've read some Star Wars novels, Timothy Zahn and the Thrawn novels, and then a few other things, some finance books, some leadership books, and all of that. So yeah, probably my favorite device right now is the Kindle. And the reason for that is very parallel to the reason why I'm kind of like reaffirming myself to say Kaleidescape is the movie watching solution for me over ripping discs. It's just simplicity, elegance, and focus. I keep my Kindle in the living room, sitting kind of on the coffee table. And at night, I come downstairs after the kids go to bed, very limited time before I'm probably already falling asleep, getting ready for the next day of work or whatever. I can sit on the couch, I can grab my Kindle, I can hit the power button, and 2 seconds, I'm on the next, first page of the next chapter of the book that I'm reading. It doesn't fail. There's no integration challenges. There's no paradox of choice when the book you're reading is right there. When the device is off, it puts the cover of the book you're reading right on it, and you hit that power button and you're right immediately in. That singularity and clarity of focus is, I think, really important for me, because I'm really bad when it comes to like creating options or debating choices and all of that sort of stuff. So when I can take away distractions and I can get singularity of focus and all of that, it serves me in general, I think, better, healthier in life. So whether that's buying a movie on a Kaleidescape, download, watch it, and don't sweat, don't worry, don't spend extra time to get into the experience, or reading on the Kindle, I think that all works kind of like best for me. And so maybe something to think about going into the new year is how can you simplify, minimize, focus, your life, your activities, the value, the benefit, or whatever that you get out of the things that you're doing, content that you're consuming, and and how you go about it. To me, I think that makes for a much healthier state of mind and state of being. So definitely, I got a couple, at least three here actually, kind of worst pieces of tech for 2022. Pretty disappointed in all these, and there's a recurring theme here as well. So number one, Control 4 distributed audio. So in 2022, Control 4 distributed audio has let me down very, very much so. When we built our house, we built our home with 8 zones of audio. We have the living room system, and now we have the theater, but we have 8 zones of distributed audio. Our office, the kitchen, front porch, back porch. My wife has a craft room downstairs. The kids have a playroom. There's basically the 4th bedroom, which is right now kind of like a Lego, another playroom essentially. And then the other zone, where's the other zone? Oh, the theater room actually is the 8th zone. It has a separate, the theater space has a separate zone of distributed audio because that room was originally going to be a gym. And of course, when you're working out, when I work out, I very, very much like having music piping in. So when I did the theater redesign in that room, I didn't take that zone of audio out. I thought maybe it would give me the option, like if I'm down there playing video games and I wanted to play music, just like Apple Music or whatever, for background noise and so on, I would be able to do that. But part and parcel of our audio setup, I had a Control 4 brand 8-zone audio matrix switch, and I had separates basically, and then a Control 4 8-zone amplifier, Control 4 brand. Now that they've and we bought those things when we built the house. So granted, these devices, they're up there in age. They're about 8 years ish old now. We built this house in 2013, so I guess 8-9 years in between. And earlier on in this year, the matrix switch died. You would go to play audio to a zone. Usually we kind of AirPlay, the way the system is set up. It's set up to be really great, where you can just pull up your iPhone, say, okay, play Apple Music, AirPlay to the kitchen, and then boom, it goes through, or do multi-zones and all of that. But playing through the matrix switch, we would get like a noise coming out of all the speakers if we put up a zone. So, okay, so what's wrong with that? Well, ultimately, it's dead. It died and fried. Of course, we're way beyond warranty now, having the device be several years old. And so the only solution was to buy a new replacement. This is a $1,000 plus 8-zone matrix switcher. We got 8 years out of it. To me, that's not enough for a device like that that's used, not used necessarily. It has a very simple function. It shouldn't really be burning out, but it went down. So $1,000 plus to buy the new Triad brand Control 4 multi-zone audio matrix switch, and it took months to get it because of part shortages, and so our whole house audio system was actually down for the better part of this year, and we would just play audio in the living room. It was down long enough to the point where I was almost to say, like, we don't even really need this. Like, we're good the way our house is designed. Let's just play audio on the system in the living room. But there are virtues to having it distributed, particularly outside and a couple of the other places around the house. So that was one. And then, wouldn't you know it, shortly after we got the matrix audio switch replacement, now the amp is dead. The amp is dead for the second time. The amp went down once, like basically just no audio, refusing to play, no sound passing through. And sometime a couple of years-ish back, we had a replacement of the amp under warranty, which was nice the first time, but the thing's dead again. And now it's too long. I get my Control 4 equipment from Dan. He's been here on the channel on the live streams and so on. Dan DeCarlo at AudioVision. So no fault at all to Dan. And I think Control 4 is still up there amongst choices to make for automation in your home, with its many virtues and features and all of that. But I have to say that I've been very disappointed in the audio. So as we sit right now, we have no distributed audio in the house once again. The amp is still in the rack, but it's dead. It just makes no sound. and we need to replace it. So it's either going to be drop another, $1,000 ish on another piece of Triad Control 4 distributed audio gear. Now effectively the fifth one, because we've had two matrices, and this will be our third amp, or try something else. And I'm actually thinking about, well, if I'm going to spend the money, maybe buying one of the Anthem, I think it's the MDX series. They have some multi-channel distributed amplifier solutions. And with that, you can do some cool stuff. You can arc the individual zones, which I don't think is necessarily really needed, but is it fun? Sure. Why not get better audio, from the ceiling speakers in a zone by running some arc on it and doing some EQ. And to me, it just feels like if this Control 4 audio, Triad audio distribution equipment, is only going to last a few years or several years, why put good money after what could be maybe considered bad versus switching over to trying a different brand. So the jury's still out on that one. If anybody has, particularly an Anthem, I'm pretty sure it's the MDX models. I'd be curious to hear what you think of them. Again, I've been pretty happy with the AVM 70 and the STR, which kind of leads me to thinking Anthem, but unfortunately their distributed amps are also a good bit more expensive than the Control 4 Triad ones. But by the time you buy 2 or 3 Triad ones for potentially one Anthem, you're coming up into a little bit more of a wash. So definitely disappointed in that. It's doing this tech stuff, having this kind of as a hobby and all that, when things don't work is like the biggest kind of frustration I think there is with it. And then particularly when the family wants to use it, because it's really my wife that uses the distributed audio even more than I do. When that's down and she tries to go to use something and it doesn't work, that's a pain point. So that's up there. Another worst of 2022 I got to call attention to is Xbox controllers on the PC. So we mentioned this in the gaming live stream with Taurus and Brad, but the latter half of this year, since summer, I have had nothing but trouble with Xbox new style series controllers staying connected to my PC for gaming. They blip, they drop out. Only the elites seem to work very reliably. And so I can't say how many times, either the kids, we've had friends over and the kids were trying to play a 4-player game, doesn't work, can't do it. You guys, forget it, just go do something else because these controllers aren't doing the job. Or, family time, we try to play a 4-player game, heave ho, Overcooked, something like that, and people's controllers are dropping. And on PC, it's even more compoundingly frustrating than it is if it were the console dropping the controllers, because when a controller drops in a PC game, like on a Steam game, for example, you don't just turn it off and turn it back on and have it reconnect. Usually, like, those controllers had to be seen and connected to the computer and reliably synced before you started the game. So it's not a matter of just resyncing them. It's a matter of like, okay, we got to shut the game down, get everything, restart the computer, whatever, and then launch the game again. So total hassle. I think somewhere along the line, engineers at Microsoft broke the controller firmware, and they haven't fixed it reliably yet, is my hypothesis there. Another worst stuff. This is kind of almost a Debbie Downer year when it comes to devices. I got more worst of than best of, but I have to put another Control 4 item on the books and say that I have been extremely disappointed in the Control 4 Neo remotes. So I have 2 Neos, one for the living room, one for the theater room, and I've complained about it and showed them on stream. These things fail to connect to Wi-Fi. They lock up and require reboots and resets. The Neo for the theater has ghosting on the screen. So if the screen is on long enough on a fixed page or whatever, and then you flip to a different page or you flip to a different control screen, there's image retention. It does fade, but it looks really ugly for the rest of the session that you're actually using it. Durability has not been good enough. Somewhere along the lines, pretty sure one of the kids crunched, sat on or something, one of the Neos in the living room, and it wasn't able to take that kind of abuse. So yeah. I am very, one of the first things I'm looking forward to in 2023 is jettisoning these Neo remotes, which is very painful because these things were like whatever $500 purchases. They have no resale value. For, the one that got crunched or the one that has all the image retention and stuff on it. It's just a little bit past too long to get like a warranty replacement or whatever on the one that at least has the image retention. So I think this is going to be $1,000 of electronics just junked into the recycle bin, the e-recycle bin at Best Buy, same place that my my last Triad Audio Matrix switch just went to. $1,000 just tossed into a bin with no remaining value or resale value whatsoever. So I hope that Control 4 does a much better job with the Halo remotes. As soon as I can get my hands on the Halo remotes, I'm all in on those things, and I hope they have much better kind of operation and durability than the Neos did. I think the history of the Neo remote being a Kickstarter and then going into Control 4 and then things changing and then they broke off, and I think a lot of the people that made the Neo went and did something else. I think it's just been a cluster bleep of evolution for that device, and it didn't work out or live up to kind of its expected pedigree. And I'll do another one here that just came to mind as I was talking. I didn't actually have it on my list, but another kind of disappointment. As much as I have enjoyed the picture quality and gaming performance and all of that of the LG TV, I have the 83-inch G2. I will put that one simultaneously in a best of and worst of category for 2022. Again, because OLED picture quality is something to see, and gaming on that system or on that display is just insane. I'm actually a better gamer on that television than I was on the Sony with full VRR and response times and all of that stuff. It's amazing. However, that TV has been fraught with firmware bugs, and particularly operational firmware bugs, whether we're talking about failure to turn on, which was a big problem with the TV for a while. Some things have been fixed. There's been some firmware upgrades. There's been some Control 4 driver upgrades. And at least now, most of the time, I can hit the button on the wall, or I can pick up my remote and I can say turn on. However, it still does not have turn on reliability to be able to pick up a remote and say turn on and go to the PC, right? Or turn on and go to the Switch. So what we do in our household, and this is just ridiculous for technology in 2022, is you always have to turn the living room on to the Apple TV. You have to make sure that everything is visible, stable. Then you select a different input or a different device to use in the room. And obviously that doesn't really pass wife acceptance factor, or even really the kid acceptance factor, when you got to jump through hoops to get, just get something up. And I find also that I really dislike the way the LG TV tries to help you. And what I mean by that is, like, if the TV's on and it's on the Apple TV input and it sees that something else is powered up, so you wake the computer up or whatever, it puts up a banner on the bottom of the screen. Hey, this thing is there. Would you like to switch to it? Yes or no? And as far as I've been able to find, like, that pop-up is not defeatable. I don't want to see that pop-up. Get that crap off my screen, right? I will switch to the other input when I am ready to switch to the other input, because I'm not even using the TV remote anyway. I'm using a source device remote, or I'm using my Control 4 remote. So I don't have an ability easily to just dismiss this pop-up. And again, even still, like, changing inputs is a dicey proposition on the LG. So I think there's still room to, like, sharpen up and fix some firmware problems in that. Hopefully those problems don't repeat themselves in 2023. But one of the virtues of the Sony X900H that I took out of my living room was its operational characteristics. That thing worked really, really well with Control 4. It would turn on when it was supposed to turn on. It would turn off when it was supposed to turn off. And it would turn on to specific inputs or change inputs and all of that as it was commanded to do. And I think this LG has some gremlins in it, or it has a mind of its own, because this thing, it turns on sometimes for no reason. And yeah, so I'm very disappointed. Again, as much as I like the picture quality and performance, I am not happy with LG's, say, operational logistics and characteristics. A lot of room for improvement there. I don't know if I'll be swapping TVs again in the new year. It kind of depends maybe on some aspects of where the channel goes. I was hoping maybe that a yearly TV upgrade in the living room could be a possibility now, so that I can always be using the new model and have it to talk about in that. But we'll see. CES coming up. We got already some of the pre-CES news has started to leak out, which is pretty cool. So they're talking about displays. They're talking about some sound bars and things like that. But yeah, we'll see what happens after CES. All right, a couple more questions, some amp question follow-ups. I have an old Bob Carver Night Shadow sub with a bad amp. Can I just buy another amp to match the watts? I'm not sure if does that sub have an integrated amp or an external amp. My Triad subwoofers in the living room have external amps. So in that case, it's very easy to swap them out. If the amp is integrated, it's a plate amp. I think you're going to have a hard time with that. If it's a passive amplifier, then yeah, I think you could buy, you just buy another amp and hook it up. Basically, it just runs the subwoofer kind of like a speaker, like any other speaker amp in that way. Sigmund Judge asking, looking for a simple config with Apple TV so that lights dim on play and come back up on pause. Yeah, Control 4 could do this. So the problem with this, and the reason why this existed and then it went away, is because the drivers changed I think with certain versions of tvOS, and then advancements or lack of advancements in terms of the available Control 4 drivers. In years past, there was a different driver for Apple TV than the one that's current in most Control 4 systems right now. And so the old driver was able to do this stuff because basically it had more state and communication facility, I think, within it, meaning you could do things like know you were playing or know you were pausing. So I work around this in my setup by kind of cheesing it, I guess, in a way. In my Control 4 programming configuration for the Apple TV, I still do have an IP-based Apple TV driver in the Control 4 setup. And so that is usable, and it can command and control it with the Neo remotes and all of that. And there still are hooks for that driver to say, like, when you play or pause or stop. But the problem is they're not intelligent hooks, meaning I have, dim the lights to 0 when the play trigger is for Apple TV happens in Control 4, and I have, raised the lights to whatever level I want them to be at when you pause or when you stop. But again, it's not specifically linked to the operation. It's linked to the buttons that you press on the remote. So if I start playback of a movie or some piece of content on the Apple TV with the Control 4 remote by pressing like OK, enter, the lights won't go off because that didn't generate a play trigger to the Control 4 system. But if I actually use the play button on the remote, which is a touch button on the Neo, that will both simultaneously make the Apple TV play and send the trigger to the Control 4 system that the Apple TV is playing. So in that case, then the lights will go down to nothing. The problem is there's no real feedback or communication going on, so it's easy to get them out of sync. I'm crossing my fingers very much so that when the new when the Halo remotes come out for Control 4. They've already said that these remotes are supposed to support some level of Siri or some level of voice capability directly in the control, through the Control 4 system. And Siri is going to be tied into that. So I think, and I'm hoping that maybe with the advent of the Halos, a new Control 4 OS upgrade, maybe a better driver, we will get some more intelligent control and interface of the Apple TV back in the Control 4 platform. But the jury is out on that. We will wait. We will wait and see. I will say again with Dan, I do intend to get my hands on the Halo remotes as fast as humanly possible when they become available in the new year. I think we'll probably do a live stream. I'm hopeful anyway to do a live stream about them pretty quickly, handling them, showing them off and all that. And I do probably even mix that into like more of a Control 4 focused live stream, showing off some of the details of like Home Composer and some of the finer elements of coding, some of the macros and control things that I have going in our household and in my theater and stuff, with like kind of another of those like dedicated device focused live streams that I had been starting there. All right, so kind of last category that I had noted for myself here, looking back on 2022, some of the home theater and like technology decisions that I had made, some best and worst. And I alluded to it already, right? But going back to the beginning of the year, it was the first few months of the year that I really did the integration, kind of the changeover of my theater. And I think that has just been phenomenal, quite honestly. And if I could go back 4 years ago and kind of and start with the design choices that I have in the room right now, I'd love nothing more than to have been able to go back and do that. So if I think about the things that I did, right, I took in-room speakers out and I put in all architectural speakers, basically all in walls, in ceiling, in walls, and then changed the screen over from a fixed screen, normal screen, to an acoustically transparent, put those LCRs behind the screen. That is just phenomenal. For home theater, I think there's really no other way to do it. Get those speakers behind the screen. And I even felt it last night. Every time I use the room now, I feel it. Sitting there, watching Strange World last night, that dialogue, it's coming from from behind the screen, from behind the character, all of that front channel audio coming from behind the screen. Just the feeling, the presentation of that is just, it's too good. And I don't think any of the trade-offs related to going, I don't think there's any negative trade-offs associated with going acoustically transparent. None of those negative trade-offs to me matter as much of the pros of having done it and having those speakers behind that screen. Moving from a 16:9 screen to scope, I think has also been phenomenal. The 163-inch scope screen, and I'm probably throwing more like a 158-inch screen of the 163. But we really use our theater room for movies more than anything else. Even this year, I don't know that I've even gamed down there at all this year, other than just experimentation. We're down there watching movies. We're down there watching premium, usually widescreen television shows, stuff like The Boys, Stranger Things, right? Wider than 16:9 presentation style television shows. And so I think having a scope screen has just been phenomenal. And if I could go back and do it over again, I would have started with scope versus normal 1:7:8:1. Excuse me. And I think the upgrade of equipment, the additional having the room just treated and finished and all of that, the way that I did it in the second build is probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. So Theater 2.0 in 2022, I think, has been a resounding success. The only other major thing that I think I could hope for is still wanting to get those theater chairs. We'll see what happens in 2023 for that. But hopefully the content on the channel helps for anybody out there that's contemplating, a dedicated projection-based home theater. I have what I called like the home theater builder series, some of the very first videos I made on the channel, where I talked at length about the design decisions I made in the room 4 years ago and why the room was what it was. And then I vlogged the whole experience coming out of 2021 and into the first quarter of 2022 about that room rebuild. You know, if you're hearing this and you're thinking about a project like that and you want some just real personal reflection and thoughts about decisions made, mistakes that I made that I could hope, hopefully my talking about it can help you avoid. Check that stuff out, because yeah, I think from a tech home theater perspective, and that room, every time we go in there and watch a movie, I'm just loving it. And so I look forward to Pile Home Theater 3.0. I've already got some grand things moving for that, but I think that's going to be maybe a little further ways down the road. And so my other kind of best of, or like favorite decisions for the year is out of redoing the theater room really inspired me to change over the living room a little bit more and step up the audio game in the living room a bit, running the separates in there, the same Focal Anthem Parasound, that trifecta, I think is just so great together. But stepping up the audio in the living room really makes me enjoy using the living room system more, to the point that sometimes, if we're just looking to chill and it's not like a super high fidelity movie, we're happy, just watching it in the living room. If we don't want to go downstairs, my wife and I, just to pop up an episode of a good TV show late at night, like, man, I'm good in the living room. That LG OLED, it looks phenomenal. Those Focal 1000s and a 2.2 setup, Anthem processing, Parasound amplification, it sounds phenomenal. Moving that system back up with the Anthem gear let me run EQ in there again, and I think that helped deal with some of the anomalies that are kind of present in that space. So I think I'm 2.2 for life in the living room. I look forward to trying out some other speaker brands and experimenting with more gear in there. I already recorded a video for what my next bigger kind of rebuild focus is going to be. Hopefully tearing up and redoing some of the structure of the living room a little bit, moving some gear up and being able to do some more reviewing and demoing of different brands and products and all of that for hi-fi and 2-channel in the living room. Very excited about that. But I exit this year with my spaces and my equipment and all of that in a place where I am happier with it than I have probably ever been. I feel very content with everything that I have in my systems. I feel very content in general, with the way that it's working. I feel happy with the decision that I made to sell off my Xbox and PlayStation and just kind of double down on the PC. I'm happy with a reduced set of sources that I have: Apple TV, Kaleidescape, Switch, PC. I think that combo, four device combo, all of those devices complement each other in ways that they don't compete for kind of doing the same thing. Obviously, 2 of them play games and 2 of them watch movies, but they do it with a different feeling, different purpose, in different ways or different levels of quality and things that they complement. They don't kind of detract, and they don't create that paradox of choice or just too many things running. Again, that trifecta, Focal Anthem Parasound, has just been working phenomenal. Tack in a couple of Arundel sound subwoofers or the Triad subwoofers in the living room, JVC projector, the LG television from a picture quality performance and gaming performance perspective. And again, I feel happy to the point where it's like, man, like I don't really know if it wasn't even for the channel, like I don't feel super compelled to change a whole lot of stuff. Anything that I change from here on out is like taking something that is just so good, and trying to make it just a little bit better. But I've got nothing nagging me other than control 4 and stuff like that. But from all of the other system components, yeah, I feel really good. So happy with those decisions. And all of that. And again, it's on my list. I kind of already said it, but selling off the Xbox and the PlayStation, I think, was the right call. doubling down on PC. I love how many Sony first-party games now are coming to PC. I think 2023 is going to rip the Band-Aid off. We're going to see so many PlayStation exclusives coming out on Steam. And I've got some really, really cool stuff, I think, planned for the new year with regards to gaming on a PC, in-home theater, and all of that. I even picked up a couple of things. I got this guy right here, the remote control outlet. I'm going to be testing this on the computer, so because I want to be able to like be in the living room and click something to have the PC boot up fresh and clean every time I use it. And a couple other things in mind for the computer. More on that, which I think will be in Monday's video. Again, like the living room 2023 plan video, I think will go up on Monday. And so if I think about a couple of mistakes that I made, like what did I screw up in the content this year, or in my systems this year, things that I talked about. Well, top of the list, one of them for sure, is I put those ceiling panels in the theater room and spent the better part of the summer constantly remounting those panels. So I started with 3M Super 77 spray adhesive. That didn't hold through the summer. Randomly would walk into the room and there's panels on the floor. I tried two-sided tape. That didn't work. Tried some like hot glue gun. That didn't hold. So there was a period there where, it was just, they were all coming down one by one by one. They were all coming down. Thankfully, nobody was ever in the room and, got hit or anything. But those are the GIK, the 2A panels. I really wasn't super happy with those to begin with. So I think GIK has some room to do better quality insurance on their stuff. A lot of dings, nicked edges, and all of that with them. Luckily, they're all black and they're up on the ceiling, so the blemishes weren't super noticeable. But it hadn't been until I swapped over to using the 3M, I think it's the 74 foaming glue, that now, crossing fingers, but it's been months, and panels are not coming down. They've been up there, they've been affixed solid, so that if you're going to put foam-based panels on a wall, learn from my mistake. Just start with, and you're going to glue them anyway, start with the 3M 74 foaming glue. And I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good about those staying on the ceiling now, particularly because in the interim, since putting them up with the foaming glue, we've the city redid our street and all of the sewer and stuff outside of our house. It was a nightmare a couple of months. Basically, we didn't have access to the driveway with the Tesla to charge it, and other stuff like that was kind of a pain. But man, some of this construction equipment, literally right outside the house in the street, was shaking our house like a high magnitude or whatever, high intensity earthquake. So I shudder to think about what long-term home ownership implications that street project might have had, what stuff might have shaken loose or popped loose, inside the walls or around the house. But if these big steamrollers could shake this house like an earthquake, and those panels didn't come down, they're probably not coming down. So I could have made my life simpler if I would have just started that better. And then the downside of it, though, and I try to just forget this, is because the panels were up and fell down, and I put individual ones back up over here and over there, they are not in very good alignment at all. In some ways, I kind of resigned myself to say, like, they're all a little off. So maybe the fact that they're all off makes it look like, okay, the goal here wasn't to make like a perfectly rectangular grid of equally spaced panels, even though that was the goal. It was not achieved, particularly with having to put panels back up again, but they're misaligned enough that it kind of looks like the misalignment was the goal. But whatever, I'm not messing with them, and they're glued up there pretty solid, so they're not coming down without tearing stuff up anymore. So that's kind of one of the worst things, the learning experiences of the year in the tech and home theater. And then the other one, building here on Sammy Prescott's Jr.'s question, is you fix the ground loop hum you had. So ultimately, no, but I've come to a couple of conclusions on that, and I will have kind of a wrap-up video about it. Actually, what I just tried to do a day or so ago was I was going to pull one of the Focal 1000 IWL, one of the living room speakers, one of the Focal speakers, pull it out of the wall in the living room, take it downstairs, plug it in on a smaller, more direct run of speaker cable on the same amplifier channel that it's on in the living room. And my prediction was it would not buzz. So the reality is the theater is not buzzing. The theater has a light hiss. It's not inaudible when you put your head up to the speaker, but it's functionally a minimal expected amount of noise that you would get out of a theater. And Dan even came by and said, like, you're crazy. You're crazy if you think like this is a problem that you need to worry about eliminating. Like, this is just normal. So the theater is good. The living room buzzes. It very, very specifically buzzes. And so my expectation is that the speaker wire run between the rack and the living room is picking stuff up. So maybe the lesson here is be very, very careful if you're running long runs of speaker cable, between a amplifier and the speaker itself, and you care about things like noise floor and interference and stuff like that. Our distributed audio speakers are the same way. It's basically the same speaker wire in really long runs through the house, really long runs to get to some of the locations. But those speakers are up on a 9-foot ceiling, and even if they are buzzing, you're never going to be close enough to those speakers that you hear that buzz or you hear that noise. And maybe they're not as sensitive, or they don't quite have the same. It's just a much simpler, round, simple driver versus the increased quantity and size and whatnot of the drivers on the Focals. But ultimately, I think that speaker wire run through the house between the rack and the living room location is picking up the noise. But it occurred to me. So anyway, I tried to take the speaker out. I got the Allen wrench out. I did everything, and I go to pull the speaker out, and it wouldn't come. And it's like it's snug in the wall. So I think I may have put the speakers up a little too quickly after I touched up the paint around the opening. Or in general, I feel like in-wall speakers, and if they have like some foam padding and you cinch them down really tight, they kind of cure into the paint. And so I could see the drywall starting to lift. I could get the speaker out if I pulled hard enough, but it wasn't coming out without tearing up drywall. And I was not in any mood or interest this week to be repairing drywall just to get the speaker out. So I gave up on that idea. Said screw it. But I have another thought, which ultimately is functionally the same. I can do the same test without having to take the living room speaker out. So what I'm going to do is ultimately I have the same speakers in the theater. I have 3 Focal 1000 IWLCR6s behind the screen in the theater. So what I'm going to do is actually, and I'll cover this in a video, probably go up the week after next, and it'll kind of be my hopefully my final buzzing shakedown piece of content. But I'm just going to wire one of the theater IWLCR6s to the A52 plus amp channel that's running to the living room speaker. And so that's a different speaker wire. It's the lower gauge, bigger thickness, monoprice, 100% OFC copper speaker wire on a much shorter run. So I can hook that speaker up to that amp channel, go into the theater, kind of shimmy up, climb behind my screen, put my ear right up to that speaker, and I suspect it will not buzz. And that will be the final determination. Because I think, and also in retrospect, I've already kind of proven that, because I've got an A52, I've got 5 channels of amplification on it. 4 of those channels of amplification have Focal 1000 series speakers attached to them, and they don't buzz. 1 does. And so it's not the channel, it's not the speaker, it's got to be that speaker wire run. But the video that I've got coming out on Monday, long story short of it, and not to spoil it too much, but what I would really like to accomplish in 2023 is to kind of reface the TV speaker installation bump out of the living room. And what I want to do is make it more modular so that I can put different in walls in easily without having to redo drywall or recut drywall and all that, because I'm really hopeful that I can get, who knows, maybe some Per Listen, some Paradigm Founders, Wisdom Audio, some other Utopias maybe from Focal. I can get my hands on some other in-wall speakers in 2023 in order to test and demo them and make reviews and stuff for the channel. And I need to be able to change those out easily. So I want to rebuild the living room wall very modular. And in conjunction with that, I think what I'm going to do is take all of the equipment that serves the living room and just bite the bullet, so to speak, and put that equipment in the living room. Instead of leaving it downstairs in the rack, I'm gonna put it in the living room, provided that this all passes my wife's approval and such. But next to the bump out, I can have a little AV shelf, nice integrated AV shelf stand cabinet of some sort. And I'll bring up the STR. I'll get a dedicated amp for those two speakers, the Triad amps, bring up the PC. The Apple TV is already up there. I can still zone to the Kaleidescape easily enough. And that'll solve it, because now those speakers and the subwoofers don't have to run on the speaker wire all the way down to the theater rack. And I don't think, alternatively, I suppose I could just make a new run of speaker wire, maybe better shielded, triple shielded, and lower gauge, higher thickness. But I can't do that easily. No matter what, even if I wanted to pull another run of speaker wire or a different run of speaker wire, I have to tear stuff up. And so if I'm going to tear stuff up anyway, and I want to be able to do this modular speaker shifting, changing structure, I might as well just go all the way. And I think there's a lot of virtues to having that other gear in the living room to begin with. I hope it will allow me to more easily swap stuff out, test more things, demo and review stuff, as we go forward into 2023. So yeah, more on that in the video on Monday, and hopefully more on that in the new year. And of course, if I do that project, I think it'll make a really great series of content for the channel, basically reintegrating a in-wall, hi-fi 2.2 channel living room setup. And I will definitely kind of cover it, vlog it, and break the whole thing down in detail, like I did with the dedicated theater room rebuild at the beginning of 2022. So yeah, that's my list. So one more comment here from Sammy. Running Paradigm Founders in the theater right now. Love them. Revel upstairs. Yeah, Revel's a great one too. I think there's a lot of great speaker brands that I would very, very much like to hear in my own environment, particularly after having gone to Audio Advice Live. I probably should have that on my best of list in terms of home theater experiences for 2022 as well. Going to Audio Advice Live was really phenomenal. And then doing all of the other Michigan meetups and stuff that I went to. Get out there, make some friends, and find some folks local to you in the hobby. The Michigan Home Theater Enthusiast group off of AVS Forum, I think, is really finding a resurgence out of COVID here this year, and looking forward to more meetups and hanging out with guys, doing more theater tours and all of that in 2023. But yeah, Paradigm, I like the Anthem stuff. It's sister brand to Anthem. The Paradigm Founders looks really cool. And they've got their new in-wall line that they announced at CES. They got those new subwoofers, the XR subwoofers and stuff. So we'll see what happens if I can get my hands on any of that stuff in the new year. One other comment here, Julius. How do you feel about Henry Cavill not coming back as Superman? Yeah, DC movie continuity has been in a failure mode ultimately for a long time. They have not been anywhere close to emulating what Marvel has been able to do. So I think, and then all of the turnover and other things that happened with like Warner Brothers and HBO just isn't leaving that in a great place. I'd actually seen a couple references to people or a couple of comments suggesting like, maybe it's a matter of time before Warner just shuts down DC Comics or something. And man, that would be something. To lose superheroes like Batman and Superman, Wonder Woman, or if Warner Brothers says we're done with DC, are they going to sell it to Marvel, sell it to Disney? I don't know. The future of the rights to this stuff could get really interesting, but we'll see. What James Gunn, right? He's the one in charge now of the DC cinematic universe. So not out of the question that he comes into that role, wanting to be another Kevin Feige and basically hitting a reset button, kill all the projects, if you're going to kill the past to forge a new path for the future, you got to kill the past. And so I think you can't have the same actors in the same roles in a new continuity universe. So it's a bummer, because I think they really did have some good castings, even if all the movies weren't really great. I think they had a couple of pretty good castings there. I liked Henry Cavill. I think he made a good Superman. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. So we'll see. We'll see if DC can get on the ball with their properties. But I don't want to go too far into 2023 predictions, but I think we may find, looking back in some ways, that 2022 is the year that that movie and TV show and like media content started to change from finding its source inspirations from comic books and moving to video games. So we'll see what happens with that. But the slate of announcements, and I think there's a lot of projects that have been being either this year being negotiated, rights that have been getting set up, things that are going into early, pre-production phases. I think we're going to see a massive amount of video game related properties turned into TV series and movies in the years ahead, and maybe a diminishment of comic book based source material doing the same. We'll see how The Last of Us does. I think that's going to be the big litmus test, is if The Last of Us TV series has great production and does really, really well, that's gonna green light a laundry list of other projects that might be in a bit of a holding pattern right now, or in a bit of a wait and see mode. So that's what I had on my mind here for this one. If there's any last comments or questions, feel free to pop them in. Otherwise, we'll kind of wrap this up. Again, I want to just say to everybody, thank you so much for your support. Just doing this thing, this whole Techthusiasm thing, this YouTube thing, and the way that it grew and proliferated and turned into just so many fun and interesting opportunities, personal growth opportunities, experience building opportunities, and all of that. Super excited. I'm looking forward to doing this stuff for a long time to come, and then seeing where we're at in 23 and 24 and 25, off into the future. So again, I got just starting on making content for the new year. So I was intending to stick to a very similar content plan. Hopefully a video every Monday, hopefully a live stream every Wednesday, and then kind of something else filling in Friday and into the weekends. I think taking the excerpts from the live streams has been a useful and good idea. I'll continue doing that. But otherwise, let me know, what are the things that you want to see out of me, out of the channel in 2023? Share that in the comments. What home theater concepts, what brands or devices, models, if I can get my hands on them. Doors are opening, and I'm having a lot of conversations kind of in the background of the channel. So let me know what folks think, what direction, content things, and all of that that you want to see me cover. Otherwise, thanks so much. I'm hoping to be back next week. We were already talking about it. Me with Brad, Home Theater Gamer, and Taurus from the Fun Waste of Time, to try to do a looking ahead to 2023. Like, what are our goals, our home theater goals, our technology goals. So with any luck, that'll be next week's live. And yeah, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And all of the other holidays that are being celebrated right now. I hope you're having a really great end of year start to the new one. This one has been a little bit bittersweet. We did just have a sad loss in our family. The can't suppress the march of time. My grandparents' generation is moving on, essentially, and so that we had We had a really good holiday here, but we did have some loss as well. All right, last comment, Sid Halstead, do you use your K more for purchase or rentals? I buy. I think in the entirety of my Kaleidescape usage, I've rented 2 movies. Yeah, I'm more of a collector, and so I tend to stick to, if it's good enough for me to watch, given all the content that's out there, in the quantity that, that I watch movies, or we get the family together for movies, I just buy them. I like having them. I like having the collection and all that. But one of the things I am looking forward to in 2023 is, it's sad to see that kids get older, because there's many ways I'd like to go back to certain points of the younger ages and so on. But from a Techthusiasm perspective, as they get older, we can watch more adult movies, which means I can actually watch more movies that I would want to watch because I want to share that with them. Some point in time, we'll start the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe sequence with the whole family, and take us a long time to get through that. Yeah, Travis, hook up with Kay for a giveaway. Yeah, giveaway would be awesome. I don't know about that, but but if anybody is interested in Kaleidescape, I do have a referral code. It doesn't help you, I guess. That helps me get a little bit of movie store credit, and a little bit more clout with the channel. But if you are looking to buy Kaleidescape gear, he's been on the channel, Dan DiCarlo. There's a couple of live streams, personal friend of mine, and a dealer. So I think he would give some good pricing, good customer service, and all of that with regards to case. So I would recommend going to him for sure. All right. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your week. Happy New Year. And I will check in with you all in the new year. Thanks so much. Hit that like button, all that. Come on back for more home theater discussion and fun.